All right, welcome back. Sorry for the long transition time, but here we are with Tony, right on time, talking about the Apple II Smorgasbord.
A plethora of things, I suppose, here. Just first of all, a little quick, real housekeeping. The last several years of my life have been kind of challenging, interesting, and I'm not out looking for excuses as to why things have fallen apart and where they've been. But I have to figure out a way to deal with it. And that is part of what I'm trying to do right now. Is I need to realize I have no business doing full-on customer service. I will find somebody else to do part of that for me so that I can concentrate on other stuff and make the rest of this happen. So with that, my websites will be changing over to a new server relatively soon, and there will be a ticket system on the front page as well available. If anybody has an issue with anything, please, I want to be constructive and productive. Bring it up. I have a system to keep track of it and go forward from there, because I kind of miss doing all the rest of the fun stuff. It's kind of hard to do the fun stuff when everybody goes, how does he have time for that? Well, he doesn't have time for this. But if you don't do that, sometimes you will never do this. So anyway, with that, let's see here. I guess we can start out with the first and the first. I guess one of my themes for today was the first Apple II and the last Apple II. And, well, many of you have seen this stuff. Many of you haven't. We all know the proverbial last one that might have come out. Really isn't much different than the ROM3 we use today, except that they built in the hard drive and added a SuperDrive controller card embedded in the motherboard. It's basically the same computer. However, everything has to have a start. And notice something. Notice there's something missing. It's kind of hot in there. I got this in the early 90s, and I knew it was obviously prototype-ish. The motherboard is hand soldered, and it's got a few pieces wrong. Thank American Airlines for that. Actually, I think it was broken ahead of time. But yeah, there we go. That's right. The motherboard is hand soldered.
Wow.
And I even got Waz to sign it in 2003. So. But somebody had talked about this and said something on a forum on Apple Fritter, I think, and somebody else said, "Oh, I've seen that one." And I forgot one of the early Apple employees chimed in and says, "Oh yeah, that's a prototype. I had to use that 3 months before the computer came out because that's all we had."
Does it even have a serial number? No? Clean?
It was taped shut. It was covered in dust and stuff when I got it. It has hardly any stamping in here. The construction of this case is a lot lighter than the production one. Obviously, you can see that here. The particular keyboard that came with it is a couple years newer, so I imagine it got changed over time. It probably got used in the shop for a while, but I have never fired it up. But the original would have had a power supply very similar to this, with the little bat switch on it that I still to this day cannot understand how they thought this was going to work. Because these, even the ones I replaced it with, weren't as great, but yeah, okay, you're going to knock that off. But anyhow, this is an interesting piece of history here too, because it's never been riveted shut. It's marked reject from back in the day because the cable's not long enough to reach the motherboard, and here's why. where's-
the opposite side.
Double power supply.
It's plugged on the, it's on the wrong side of the case. So it can't get over there. So the poor thing never got used. It's like somebody got to the point when they said, oh, forget it. But if you ever wanted to see a vintage original power supply in pristine condition without any burn marks on it, any smoke, any ground resistors,
It's never been used.
never been used. I've never bothered to plug it in. So I imagine somebody tried, but no, the thing's in perfect shape. A little quick offshoot, off-topic thing. To develop things, you need resources, usually money. If you wonder where the Commodore Amiga came from, they sold these little joysticks for $9.99 for the Atari 2600. They were marked the Amiga Company. It was 2 years before the computer came out, before Commodore got involved in it. They have this and a joy board, so you could stand on a joystick and use this Atari 2600 ski slalom thing and act like you were actually skiing, which click, click, boring, click, yes. One might say it was the first DDR attempt. Back onto that. Little other things here. New in box, never opened. You always see that stuff on eBay. You'll buy it. Somebody's going to bank on you the fact that you're going to buy that and you're never going to open it, right? Because you don't know what's in that box. But you also don't know what other things are out there that can make it. That can make that box look like it's never been opened.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind. People have been known to do surreptitious things. I have 400 feet of this. I'm not using it for anything.
For display purposes only.
Yes.
Yes.
I might
Do not
put
use
mount
this for
pieces to
prizes.
something other and use it for something, a wall product or something, but that's where that's going to go.
Apple's not good enough for us.
Yeah. And let's see. Put that one away for a moment. Let's put this right down here. This stuff will be available during the vendor fair to look at as well, if there's interest. I'll have some of it out. Let's see what else we got here. And along the way, in order to get places, there's a early, probably the first production layout style of a 2E motherboard. It says video connector here, not auxiliary slot. It was originally meant to be the equivalent of slot 7's RGB, but with a lot more access. Oh, and by the way, since you can get to the bus, it's got the memory on it. Well, the memory wasn't the first purpose. It was some kind of thing. Then they figured out double high res after they shipped about 10,000 units. Hey, wait, if we make these few changes, change a couple things on here, okay, give us all those boards back, we'll give you a better one. And it eventually became the auxiliary connector because they figured out we can also bank switch the memory on here. That is a, this one is labeled Super 2. The term 2X was always used because, about the 2X? Well, the 2X is the, what everything was until it got some kind of name. And for the semi-tongue-in-cheek comments I posted on the KFest list about the names of the computers, 2E, you know, enhanced, extra, whatever, J plus, just because, well, we don't know it's Japanese, but just because. So, this is an actual Rev A motherboard that one of the first production runs, except there's still some marks and stuff on it, because someone will look at it and go, you know what, we need to fix this, that's not right, whatever. So a lot of this goes on behind the scenes. You know, okay, that didn't work, run these again. I always wonder what happens to this stuff. Sometimes people take it home, put it in a box, other times. I even found, I don't think it made it here actually, I even found in an electronics store in San Diego at a surplus place, 2C blank motherboards for $3 with the edges still in there, they hadn't popped out yet. So I doubt Apple put that there. I'm sure some circuit board vendor said, we didn't get paid for these or this, whatever, and it ended up in a pile, ended up in the surplus store, but that was cool. Things you can come around and find. A little side trip here, we can see that.
Oh.
Who says engineers don't have to be creative? It's a space war game, and there's no doubt what it is.
Wow.
And similarly along the lines with the 2 Plus and the 2, look at the various revisions of boards. And somewhere along the line, after the 2E was done, and we had the 3, we know where that went. Okay, we'll try again. And we've all heard about this Apple II that could run Macintosh stuff. Well, it's not really the full case. It doesn't run Macintosh stuff, but this has 2 auxiliary slots. The intention was for a CPU card, co-CPU card, to sit across these 2. And in this case, it would have been a 6800 that they thought about, but a 68,000 would have been possible. 128K of RAM, 2 serial cards. The disk controller is not on board, but otherwise it's the same footprint as a 2E, same back panel, and it's got RGB on board. Does pretty much most of the 3 video modes, but it's a 2. Again, you have to wonder, was the 3 supposed to be the next 2? Until somebody said, wait a minute, we want it to be something else. And the consumer said, no, we want that one. Because every time they went back to something, they had to come back to what funded the rest of the next 10 years of Apple? AppleWorks and the Apple II. All the way to 1993. Anyway, you may have heard of called the Golden Gate. That's this one, and when I got this, it was handed to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the one. And he said, how many of them are there? And he says, that's it. Hand soldered. It's a 5-layer board. And it's from 1984, but late 83 design. Probably about the same time as the 3 Plus. Actually, here's a couple of more of these. Those are the ones I had out. No, I did that. Something of other interest. Looks like a nondescript 2 Plus board. It's a little dusty, but see what it will look like when it's cleaned up. It's pretty shiny on the backside. The interesting thing about this one has a date code of 1985, week 16. The 2GS prototype was broken out on a table in multiple pieces of breadboards and whatnot at this time. Yet here's a board that was made in 1985, and you have to wonder why would they do that. Service parts have to be kept in stock to keep the products going. So even though they redesigned the 2E to make it less expensive to manufacture than this, which you can obviously see that, you probably a few times had to go back and say, we need more of those. And you know, they could have revised it and said, here, make one like this instead, but We all know how the Apple II is structured with all the idiosyncrasies and strange things that shouldn't be, that are, and then all of a sudden now that idiosyncrasy becomes a feature, and if you fixed it, it wouldn't be compatible anymore. So the only way to keep it the same is to, it's like the Bosses 108 clone from the German clone. I like to call it 101% compatible. It's perfectly nailed. If you read the paperwork, look at the schematics. Yeah, they fixed a few things. Oops. The Franklin Ace 1000 will not dial with an AppleCat modem because there's a slight change in a frequency on the motherboard that the AppleCat modem uses to base the DMTF off of. So the phone company goes, I don't know what you just said. Have to put it in pulse mode.
Or like that bug in the 6502 where if an address was on the boundary of a page, it would get the second byte from the beginning of the same page instead of the next page, but in the 65C02 fixed that?
Yeah.
And so on the enhanced 2E, programs that were using that
don't work anymore. Yeah. You know, how many times have you've seen the developer docs? Follow the documentation. There's a few of those where Apple got bit because they didn't either. Oops. Along the prototype road, 2GS, probably the first, actually this is I think the second, the first ones were blue. This one is very close to the released ROM 1. And if you look at the cover of any of the 2GS documentation that has the 2GS with the open lid and the power supply on top, this is the motherboard you'll see. Probably not this exact one. There are quite a few of these, but it's this yellow silk screen. It says SKA 321-03 on it, and the service documentation has that board on it as well. This is where, let me see here. Yes, this is. Actually, real quick here. I found these someplace. Adam and Eve for your Apple II. I thought, what could I saw the box and like that, and what that possibly, and just thought, you know what? That's two paddles.
Okay.
Adam and Eve.
Adam. I was expecting adult toys.
So it's his and hers paddles.
Yeah, and you see where somebody probably sat at home and made these with phone cords and off-the-shelf boxes and proudly packaged them. You know, the industry we started at is an awful lot like where we're at right now. Where does all the stuff come from that we have? People's hands at home. Got a price on it marked $39.95. 1979 money. Tech Designs, Elliott City, Maryland. It really does feel a lot like, you open up the box, there's a few slips of paper in there, and a bit of personality. And there's even an extra pin taped to the bottom of the box in case you break one.
For the connector?
Yeah.
And how do you connect that spare pin onto the connector?
You can disassemble it. It top pops off.
Yep.
Pop it through, solder it. All right, so another interesting thing here. Some things also come out, but usually there's a lot that doesn't. And this is a couple of these poor things are been boxed and thrown around. This is a 2C before it was released. They would send these out to schools and developers to run their software and check. This is actually a slightly later model than the shipping one. Most of you have probably seen the inside of one, okay? This is rather interesting.
Is that a floppy drive?
This is basically the Liron card that's from inside the Unidisc drive, but it's on a 34-pin cable. It's got a 20-pin here, and this particular 2C prototype has a slightly larger slot, but it also has many innate serial ports. But it still has a traditional brick power supply. It's not a 2C plus, it's a 2C. So here's a Liron card. It's like, until somebody figured out, let's do it the other way.
Seems like it. Now, was that something where somebody just hacked that up? Or
No, this is.
Or was it something where it might have been an early step?
This is an early step, an early mid-range step. Interestingly, you know, the Unidisc was still a thing 2 years later, even though it wasn't until the 2GS came out that they switched over to the drive technology and went with the dumb drive that turns out to be actually better. Actually, let me move that out for a moment. Another off-topic thing here. Applied Ingenuity. Remember the people that used to make fun of applied engineering? Ended up having to change their name to simply Ingenuity. They also made Amiga hardware. There's an inner drive for the Amiga. Max HD. And the Amiga had a big, huge connector inside. Now, this is the one that was $3. It's got the snap-out edges on it still. It was big, huge, you can barely see anymore, but somebody took a marker and said, nope. Stacks of them. Just wish I had gotten more. Oh, they are here. Along the way, other people try other things. And these are 3-inch drives based on the same technology that the Disc 2 has.
Not 3.5.
Not 3.5.
3.
3. I have the floppy drive. I have the floppy upstairs. 19-pin connector, but it will plug into a Disc 2 card, and it formats like a single-sided 5¼ floppy. That was the so. These were a bit more expensive to make, so I can see where the media and the floppy basically killed it. But somebody had the right idea at one point to make more rigid discs. And then there's things that
It'd be interesting to see if there's any data on that floppy.
yeah, I need to actually plug it in. Here's another one of the boards that's in that 2C. This stuff, this stuff will be able to look at. And some things you wonder, what was the price of a 2C back then? About $1,100 or so?
Yeah.
How much was the Unidisc 3.5-inch drive list? Somewhere about $5.99 or $6.99, and you know, here's an example. The Mac Classic computer, $11.99. The 80 meg drive, $9.99. You have to wonder, you get a whole computer for just a little bit more than the price of that hard drive. This kind of makes me wonder why, if one of these was $5.99, I don't know what 2 would have cost, but I have a feeling that's probably one of the reasons this didn't materialize. Because kind of odd price point to place that at. And then there are the things that get put together that you wish actually had happened. Just a little bigger.
The monochrome?
Yeah. Still green. Has the same stand on it, except the poor little stand can't really deal with this nice big monitor.
Want to swap?
Put the tape on there to keep it. That's this fits the bill of the 2C where you package it and carry it off happily ever after on your bicycle. This one, not so much.
Was that an earlier one or a later one?
It was marked prototype, but never happened. So it's got some manufacturing sample stuff on it and whatnot. So basically, they said, let's have this and let's see what it's like. Okay, we're going to sell for that. Because that's how you would do production. When you put your bids out, you say, okay, I want you to make me this. So here's a 2C brick. It's got a flat cord on it instead. No lines. The bottom doesn't have any, it's just, you can see the milling marks and whatnot. But this is, okay, we're going to make this for you. This is what we did. Some of the earlier ones for this, it's an off-the-shelf 12-volt power supply. It's just a black box that was something you'd buy from a supply store. So they said, okay, we need 12 volts, but we want our logo on it. Here's the original Apple paddles. Feeling like they probably cost more than $39.95. Funny thing is, they're almost about the same. Phone-like cord, hand-assembled and snapped-together connector. A couple of these same push buttons. These say Apple on them, but those are nicer to hold. Oh. That goes back to the early 80s, since schools were putting those in the 2E boxes for a while. And hardly anybody ever remembers the Mac SE coming out. The ad for AppleWorks, it had the Porsche on it, and the wheels. The Mac SE had a Porsche before that, because they were comparing it to the previous one. You even had a thing, test drive a Mac. They'd give it to you to take home for 3 days.
I did that.
And then...
And my boss bought 2 of them.
There you go. It's time to own a Mac.
I wasn't able to get my own until 92.
Everybody has disdain. There's always this disdain for, oh, Macintosh. I'm not going to use that. Whatever. But you know what? Without this, that wouldn't have existed. But equally as so, without that, this wouldn't have grown. Because they needed a vision. They just kept trying to change it, and people said, no, we want that one. About 1992, when the grocery stores were still giving out schools Apple computer systems, it was late, I think it was early 93 or something. We had just bought 600 2GS systems at an auction. And Apple was finally getting rid of everything, clearing out anything that was 90s and whatnot. Came back with 600 systems. Had the fulfillment people that were selling, that were filling those orders by saying, here's my $25,000 worth of receipts. Send me one Apple II. Oh, we don't have Apple IIs anymore. We'll send you an LC. No, I want an Apple II GS. But no, I want an Apple II GS. We shipped about 90. Drop shipped on behalf of schools who said, we want an Apple II GS, not the LC, for that program. I always thought that was like, now you can still see people want what they want, That was always table covered with weird stuff up here. with that, I will change the subject here a little bit. 15 minutes. That's the hardware side of it. Then there's the software side of it that isn't really as exciting because, at least at first glance, because all you see is, here's a box, says Apple Computer on it. 2720 Orchard Park Way, San Jose, California. Conspicuously the size of floppies, and as if we've not seen a lot of these over the week. But this is where it gets. See if this is in the and it's funny when you look back at those of you who probably all started by downloading stuff off bulletin boards and whatnot. You know, the same 4 games were on the same floppy that you got off the AE line or something. And when I was going through some stuff from Apple at one point, I'm finding the same stuff. They were just as into it as well.
All Apple employees.
Yes. However, with that brings, okay, so this is a box of floppies from an early Apple era, and contains various things marked ProDOS 8 or ProDOS machine language assembly, whatnot, source code bits, probably. I don't know what's on them.
Applesauce.
Yeah, that's coming. That's why I've got one. It'll be done. But better yet, a lot of this stuff, it's 40 years old now, 40, almost 45 in some ways. I don't think it matters anymore. It's time to let's see what we got here. We get a startup graphic. And it's really good.
Is your laptop on screen saver?
It is, yeah. No, it's gonna. Yeah, that's what I want to see. All right. Which brings us to think a GitHub-like environment administered by Apple II people. Very A2-centric. Not just a place to dump things, but a place for new projects to prosper, hopefully. But more importantly, a lot of, don't believe that, it's not empty. I've actually posted it. As I see some eyeballs locked on the screen right here. There's a lot of source code of things out there that just out there. The Copy 2 Plus 8.4 source, short story long, long story short. The 9.0 version that we all know really sucks in many ways. It's nothing like the one that works. Why is that? They tried to upgrade it. Well, no, they actually had to, because apparently the person that wrote this for them died, disappeared, and the computer, so all their stuff went to probate and it was gone and nobody had copies. And fast forward a few years later, after that 9.1 came out, I'm digging through a box of stuff that we bought from a swap meet that I'm pretty sure was county auction probate stuff from Riverside County in California. And there's an inner drive sitting in there, and it's got a controller label on it, but the drive is labeled bad. And I said, as this guy was about to chuck it into a bin, I said, no, give me that. I have to have that. I'll just, because the card was on it. I'm not, yeah. So I put it down. At lunchtime, I went over and got it out, and plugged it in, and turned it on, and didn't hear anything except the fan. I said, well, that hard drive might be stuck because it's one of those kind that used to do that. So I unbolted the top, put the needle nose pliers in there and turned the little spindle on the side of the tandem drive and freed it, and turned it on, and it, oh, really? Turned it back off, put the card in the computer, turned it back on, booted up that computer, and got this simple 4 items on a menu. The oddest 4 items ever. But I said, the print shop, AppleWorks, Merlin, and Basic. I'm like, that's a really odd set of stuff. Let's see what this Merlin is. Never mind the fact that print shop doesn't even belong on a hard drive because it was never Protos based in the first place. We'll get that. I looked at that later. So I load up, hit the button for Merlin, and sure enough, I get Merlin 8 point blah blah blah, Roger Wagner Publishing, and oh, do a directory, do a catalog, and I see a folder that says C2P. I'm thinking there was also a few others, UDC, L128, Basic, some other stuff. I thought, what the heck is this? C2P. So I went in there and looked and saw util.system.s, all the loaders, main stuff, whatever. You've got to be kidding me. Because the guy that wrote that also did the firmware for the Laser 128. So on that hard drive was Microsoft Basics, the Laser 128 licensed copy of Basic, the Laser 128 ROMs, the ROMs for the drive card, Central Point Copy 2 Plus. What were the odds that I'm going to find that thing? Shoved in a. It was going to. Actually, let me rephrase that. It found its way to me. I mean, I didn't go to the swap meet that weekend. For all I know, it's been sitting in the back there for several months. But no, it just showed up, and from forever, for once in a while, I try to track down people and say, well, what should we do with this? Can we, blah, blah, blah. And again, I'm back to, I don't think it matters anymore. So we're in an ambiguous state on some of this stuff. Therefore, that's the other reason for the alternate option on Git repository is we can just put the stuff that we aren't sure on. But I don't want it to. But it's not. Again, it's not meant to be a free-for-all kind of thing. But we'll have a little. It's a little more customizable this way, and there'll be some other exciting projects coming out. The site will be open. The contents on it will be mostly like GitHub in terms of you can just view it. There'll be a few things where we'd like you to have an account to view. It'll all be set up within the next 2 to 3 days. There should be a method, sign up. The Copy 2 Plus source will be made publicly visible. And I'm sure there's a few people in here that are happy about that because something else going on with that one. But I've got lots of other stuff. You know, you've got This Old House online. Well, here, This Old Floppy Disk. Let's see what's on this one today. And here's one here that says profile pictures. I can't imagine what kind of pictures, but there's 10 of these discs that say profile pictures.
I just wanted to add a couple of things because I'm kind of helping out with
Yes,
this thing. It isn't just for old projects and things like that. If you've got a project you want it in version control and you want it to be, you know, Apple II folks who are keeping an eye on things or whatever, and you're welcome to come along and put your project there. I'm in the process actually of setting up several of my projects on there. Some of them will be private, some of them will be public. That's the nice thing about it is you can have private projects without paying for it like you do on GitHub, which is very nice. But you know, we hope that it's useful for people, and we'll be finishing setting things up over the next few days. Although it's already usable, I mean, we've been checking stuff in and out of it. It works great. There's just some kind of secondary bits and pieces that need to be added to it, that kind of thing. a2source.com. And yeah, it's going to be exciting.
It's basically going to be run by a multitude of us behind the scenes. It isn't a one-man fiefdom or anything. It's got a lot of support from
multiple admins, so that if somebody's life gets busy, somebody else can deal with things, that kind of thing. So we're all. A lot of us are now at a point in our lives where you'll abruptly not be available for an extended period. So it's helpful to have several people in a position to pitch in. So that would be helpful.
and last but not least on that, it's GitHub compatible. So anything you configure for GitHub access, the access works the same way, different URL. API is the same. And with that, I think I'm giving back
I can
couple
also
minutes.
add that it does have features like, for each project, you can have a wiki, you can have, it has a bug database, it has, all of that kind of stuff. So it's also a great place to just track the state of your project and share information and all of that.
all of that will be available for once you sign up for an account. You can be able to use all that. So if you have a project you want to do that you want 4 or 5 people to work on now, but then you want to open it up later, this will allow you to do that. Unlike the public version of GitHub where you post it, it's visible right now, and that's the way it is. You can leave something quiet for a couple of days, set it up the way you want it, then open it. It'll all be available to everybody. No.
Can you go back to the homepage? It's more photogenic.
That 2GS system picture has gotten
That picture has gotten
a lot of mileage. That was.
It was originally taken, I think you took that from me using an A2 Central ad way back when.
Yeah, it was actually on a Kodak photo CD that I did to have artwork for catalogs and stuff. But A2 Central was the first to use it, and then it's been everywhere. And it hasn't yellowed. All right, where's the patina spray? Any questions on anything or whatnot? Got a couple minutes.
Yes, I can't register with a Yahoo email address, but that's my email address.
It's possible that the registration is not fully active yet.
Yeah, it may not be fully active yet, and
I did turn it on this afternoon
Okay.
because I needed
All
to
right.
test some stuff, but I do not know if it actually functions.
Okay.
It did reject the domain. It says.
Yeah, and then there's the other part is there are some settings in there that
Right
talk
now
about.
it's there's a white list of domains that are allowed at the moment, and we'll clear that out when very shortly.
Okay.
In fact, I'll do it now, unless you have a reason why we can't let some people.
No, that's fine.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open
Yeah,
it up.
that's fine.
Try again in like
It may be a higher level thing in there where it might reject some of the more cheesy throwaway domains for email, but if there's any of that in there, we'll make it work. I'm not going to worry about it. The only thing is, on admin level, all of the admins can see whatever's on there. So,
who we promised to
but
do that.
we're not rating anything. The only difference is I'm hosting something. I need to know what's on there, but I'm not going to go looking for stuff.
Is there a list of who the admins are?
That's all.
There isn't yet.
They'll be on there. The privacy and whatnot, and all that will be on
The
there.
setup we haven't finished setting it up so that we can have static pages with information about the site yet. That's something Tony is working on now, and hopefully we'll have some of that stuff up over the next couple of days.
It's part of involved in me because I'm switching web page hosts around to a bit differently to use it. Decided that I'm getting really creative with WordPress in terms of I can do all this on a hosted server, except that it's not really that optimal anymore. So it's time to fix that. Anything else? With that, we wrap it up.
Thanks, Bill.